Good evening. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight to our wildfire event. My name is Hallie Frizee. I'm the Wildfire Communications Manager here at Pacific Power. Before we get started, I'm sure most of you noticed we've got some of our Pacific Power folks locally here in the room, so I just wanted to recognize them. So from our wildfire team, we've got Kevin. Right. From our communications team, we have Simon. We have our regional business manager, Elisa. We have one of our foresters, Lorelei. We have our area manager, Brett. There we go. Distribution managers, we've got Sam and Talon. There we go. We've also got our assistant manager, Dylan. Our emergency manager for this area is Jackie. Our new fire and emergency response manager is Todd. We also have our operations director for this area, Austin. And then we also have some of our leadership here tonight. We have our senior vice president for power delivery, Kurt Mansfield. And we have Pacific Power president, Ryan Flynn. So up here with me presenting tonight, we also have Melissa Swenson. She's our director of wildfire mitigation at Pacific Power. And I have Nora Yatsov. She is our director of emergency management. We're actually one person down tonight. We usually have our senior meteorologist with us too. He is at home with 2 sick kiddos, so I'm not nearly as exciting as he is, but I will be talking about some of our weather forecasting and modeling. We'll talk a little bit about the local service area, and then we'll kind of dive into the different areas of our wildfire prevention activities. And then we'll wrap it up with some things that you can do to be prepared for wildfire season. After we're done with the presentation, we'll have an opportunity for question and answer. So if you think of anything while we're running through this, just hold on to that and we'll come back to you at the end. So let's get started. So we do a lot of different activities here at Pacific Power for wildfire mitigation and prevention. We try to, we kind of organize them, and our teams are organized by these different groups and these different activities that you see on the screen. So the first one, which is situational awareness. It's just like it sounds. It's being aware of the situation in our service area, throughout our entire service area all the time. That's using historic data for long-term modeling. That's using short-term data to do, real-time predictions, and then as well as a couple days out. So I'll be talking about that a little bit more depth in just a minute. We also have our operational practices. So this is how we operate our system safely and possibly a little bit differently during those high wildfire risk conditions, which Melissa will touch on. Probably the most visible thing that you see in the community is our system strengthening and resilience. So this is when we're rebuilding lines, replacing poles, doing sectionalizing, putting other things on the lines to make them work better, our enhanced inspections, things like that. And then underlying all of that is our engagement, which is why we're here tonight. We're really excited to be here before wildfire season starts. We're going to as many communities as we can in Oregon, and like I said, we'd love to have our local team here because these are the ones who live and work here in your community and know it best. But there's also a chance for us to meet some of our customers. Occasionally we have our regulators here as well, some industry partners. I also see we have some of our public safety partners here tonight, so thank you for being here. So this is a little snapshot of what we do here in Bend, what our service area looks like. The areas in that kind of light blue on the map are areas where Pacific Power provides your electricity. It's about 600 miles of distribution lines. These are the lines that bring the power down to your house. 44 miles of transmission lines. So these are the larger ones that carry from generation facilities, carry that power across vast distances. And then we have 10 substations in the area. And so the substation is what takes the power from your transmission and makes it usable on your distribution. The one thing you don't see on this map is a lot of purple areas. And some of the areas where we've been in the state, if you have purple on the map, that means you're in one of our areas of high wildfire risk or fire high consequence area. So here in Bend, we don't see a lot of the FHCA area, but that doesn't mean the risk is zero. It's never zero. We all know that. So we'll be talking about some of these activities and different things we're doing, but just know that these apply to your area as well. So this is normally where Chester comes up and is very charming and does his thing. So I'm going to try my best. So one of the biggest tools we have is our situational awareness capabilities. And it's a combination of different teams and different skills, but really it's about knowing what's happening every day across our entire service area. And so one of the ways we do that is we have a team of in-house meteorologists. So we're one of the first utilities in the West to have our own team of in-house meteorologists. So these are meteorologists who come from the National Weather Service or NOAA or TV weather or variety of places, some data scientists, and they spend all their time looking at the weather just for Pacific Power customers. And so it's actually a team of 6, or almost soon to be 6, we're at 5 right now, that are across our 6-state area. So that's also with our sister company, Rocky Mountain Power. But every day, 24/7, 365, they're putting together a forecast for every part of the service area that we serve. So we have every day in the morning, we get an email. It has the weather, tells us, are we going to see impacts from rain? Are we seeing impacts from snow, from high winds? But then on top of that, we also get a forecast that says, what are the fire conditions like? Are we at high risk? And so it's kind of on a scale, and it tells us what the risk looks like for that day for that service area. And it also has the next 5 days out so that we can start thinking about how we're going to operate that system differently. So if we see that the risk is increasing or we are expecting bad weather, our local teams will start looking at what they maybe need to do or what people or assets we need to have staged and ready to go. So our meteorologists, they don't just do wildfire, they're, all types of weather. So in the winter, we're looking at really strong winds, ice storms, but from spring through early fall, we're laser focused on fire season. That is our top concern for our meteorologists. That's what they're looking at all day, every day. We actually have a couple of tools that we use pretty regularly. You'll see the one with the orange on the screen. That's our Wildfire Analyst tool. It allows us to simulate what would happen if we were to have a fire in a certain area under those current conditions or the conditions of the next 5 days. And it can show us what those impacts might look like. We also have what we call our WRF model. This is our weather model. We can see wind, we can see lightning, we can see precipitation, and how that affects our different service area locations. And kind of how we do all this is with our weather station network. So Pacific Power actually has our own set of weather stations across all the areas we serve. We have about 178. It'll be closer to 190 by the end of this year. Here in Bend proper, we have 4. If we move that scope out to include Redmond, we're up to 9 weather stations. So these are weather stations in your neighborhoods. They're telling you what the weather is right now. And we really rely on these because, what's happening on one part of our service area is not the same as what's happening on the other. And so for us to make those really important decisions about, how we're going to operate the system, what we're going to have people working on, we really have to rely on that very localized data. But we also have weather stations that we share with other folks. So we get data from other local weather stations. They feed us information about what they're seeing so that we can get, that more granular forecast. And in turn, we share our data with them. In fact, you can actually see all the weather stations that we operate on our website, pacificpowerweather.com. It's pretty cool. You can go on and find the weather station nearest you. When you go in, you can select that station. It'll tell you, what the current weather is, what we're looking at in terms of temperature and wind speed and humidity. But you can also look at the historical data. So you can see, okay, this is the top kind of wind speeds we see in this area, or this is how dry it's been, or this is how wet it's been at this time of year. And so it just helps you stay a little bit more informed about what we might be doing and what you can expect. So I definitely encourage you guys to check that out. It's pretty fun. So we've been talking a lot about the short-term modeling that we do for weather. So again, that's right now and then about 5 days, possibly a little bit longer, sometimes out where we're watching the weather. But the other component of our situational awareness is looking at historical risk. So we've taken 30 years of data and we've compiled it into this really interesting computer model. We've looked at the terrain, we've looked at weather, we've looked at previous fires. We also look at where people live, where the structures are, things like that. And we've put together our own in-house model that allows us to understand the risk level in every area that we serve. Like I said, it's a 30-year model, so it's a lot of data that feeds into it. And we're looking at things like wind gusts. It shows us, things like humidity, the hot, dry, windy index. So when we're at those peak risk levels, when we might be considering something like a public safety power shutoff, which Nora's going to cover in a little bit, We really rely heavily on these historical forecast tools to tell us, are we reaching those really dangerous levels? And in addition, to the information we feed into the system, we rely on data coming in from the National Weather Service, from NOAA, from the National Interagency Fire Center. We use things like the National Fire Data Rating System. These are all kind of well-known, good, strong data sources that are able to provide us with every bit more of information that we have and we can put into the model, the more accurate it's going to be. And so that's kind of a high-level overview of what we do for our situational awareness. But now I'm going to hand it over to Melissa, and she's going to talk to you about what we're doing to make our system more resilient to wildfire.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Melissa Swenson. I'm the Director of Wildfire Mitigation Strategy at Pacific Power, and I'm very happy to be here. I've been coming to Bend basically all my life. My uncle had a house on the east side of town for many years, and my parents used to take us camping up on the Deschutes above into the 7th Mountain. And in fact, I first learned to drive on Forest Service roads out there. So it was if you hit anything, you aren't going to harm anything, sort of place to learn. First time behind the wheel. I never hit anything, just putting that out there, no damage. But very happy to be here tonight talking to you about what we're doing to build a more resilient system for wildfires. So this is really about strengthening our system and making it more resilient to hazards. And we've got some of the equipment that we use to do that over here on the board. So if you have a chance, please go check it out. But it's using things we call cover conductor or aerial spacers or fire-resistant poles to make sure that if there is a fire, those are more resilient. Or in the case of things like cover conductor, we prevent the risk of a spark. So if you think of when you're driving along the road and you see poles and wires for electrical wires, most of the time when you see that wire, it's bare wire. So if something comes into contact with it, like a branch or a balloon, you could potentially cause a spark. And a spark could cause an ignition and cause a fire. So what we do when we have cover conductor is we put a layer of insulation over that wire. And think of it very much like kitchen appliances. You don't have a bare wire from your toaster to the plug-in. You have a layer of insulation over it, so you make sure that if it comes into contact with something, it's not going to have a spark. So very similar idea, just much higher voltage. But when we put that cover conductor on, that means if something taps the line, if something hits it like a balloon or a branch or something, you're going to reduce the risk of a spark happening, which could cause an ignition or cause an outage. We also are putting things into place, also what we call aerial spacers. And we don't have any of those on the board over there, but you can see the example there in the middle. And what they do is they hold the wires apart on a line. So if the wind is blowing, the wires won't accidentally slap together. Because again, if we have contact, we have the potential risk of an ignition, potential risk of an outage. So in places of strong wind, these spacers will help hold the wires apart. So we pair that when we're talking about system hardening with things like fire-resistant poles, like steel and fiberglass. So that's replacing the wood poles, which you all probably see a lot of, with poles that are more fire-resistant. We'll never say fireproof, but we will say fire-resistant. And we also put in things around smart devices, what we call system automation. And those are equipment like relays, reclosers, and this is a mouthful, communicating fault current indicators. CFCIs. You do not have to remember that. It's not a quiz. But you could think of that as those devices is all working in partnership. So those relays and reclosers sit on our lines, and they are listening and feeling for taps on the line, for contact with the line from, say, like a balloon or a branch or something else that may be hitting the line. And what they can do is shut off the power within fractions of a second. So the faster we can shut off that power, we reduce the risk of a spark happening. And then those communicating devices will then be able to call back to our operations center and say, hey, the power is out, and here's the location where it's at. So then we can send crews out to go take a look and see what's going on and figure out what we need to do to restore power. So we'd like to put those along the lines in multiple places, because if you can put them in multiple places, it means that we can isolate the number of customers like you who may be impacted by an outage if something taps the line. So if you think if we've only have one on a really long line, that means if the tap happens up here, everyone on a line is without power. But if we can start putting more of those on lines, we can isolate them, and means that fewer of you may be impacted by an outage. We can also set those to be more sensitive. So we'll talk about that when we talk about operational practices, but that's one of the things we'll do here to also make sure that we're reducing the risk of an ignition or a spark during high fire consequence or high fire conditions. So I just want to give you a look at where we're doing the work. So this year we have about 175 miles of hardening planned this year. We're about 75 miles through that as of the end of April. And we're replacing also expulsion fuses to go along with that. So we have some examples of fuses that we're putting in right over here on the board. And just to give you an idea of the location we're doing these. So Hallie talked about the fire high consequence areas, and that's where we focus a lot of the system strengthening and resiliency work. So we're doing a lot of that work in Southern Oregon, a lot of work. We were down there the last couple of days in Medford and Grants Pass talking about the resiliency work. But those are the areas that are in purple, those fire high consequence areas. But also across our service area, we are doing vegetation management. And this looks like things like making sure that our right-of-ways around our poles and wires are clear of vegetation. So we look for limbs and lines, vegetation under equipment, and hazardous trees. So in areas, those purple areas, we're doing it more frequently, but we're also checking all the areas just to make sure that everything looks okay, and we're making sure that our equipment is free of those vegetation hazards. And we're also making sure that our poles and are clear of vegetation around the bottom of them. So we call that pole clearing. Very simple, you're like, duh. But yeah, so we do pole clearing, and we're making sure that there's vegetation clear around the poles. So again, if a spark happens, if it falls to the ground, we're trying to make sure there's no vegetation that could catch fire there. And if we do see in our areas trees that are dead or diseased, we'll make sure to take care of those as well. And we also are checking on our equipment. So we do a lot of inspections in our areas of fire high consequence, looking for problems around equipment that may cause a spark or an energy release. So we want to make sure to prioritize and get those taken care of as quickly as we can. But we are also doing safety inspections for our whole service area, including here in Bend. And that means we are going around doing visual inspections of all our equipment to make sure it looks okay. And if there's anything that needs to be addressed, we're getting it taken care of. So now we're going to talk about how we operate our system safely. And really our approach is, as the fire risk escalates, so does our response. So as Hallie said, we have areas of elevated fire risk, those fire high consequence areas, but that doesn't mean there's no risk. And you all know that, living here in Central Oregon. And just to give you an idea, last year in Oregon, we had more than 2,000 fires that burned nearly 2 million acres. So we were #1 in the nation for that. Don't want to be #1 in the nation again this year. And we're at risk again this year because the forecast for the season for the National Fire Center suggests that we're going to have the same conditions for fire here in Oregon as we had last year. So we want to make sure we're doing our part to reduce the risk of a fire in Oregon. And so as part of our situational awareness that Hallie talked about, every day we are monitoring those conditions that could cause a spark to make sure that we're keeping you all safe through our operational practices. And that can mean placing those settings that we talked about, those relays, to be more sensitive so that if there is a fault, the power shuts off more quickly. And that's known as enhanced safety settings. De-energizing circuits when there is fire too close to our equipment, and that's emergency de-energization. So again, that's fire coming towards our equipment, so we want to make sure to turn it off so that we aren't causing any problems for responders. Or as a last resort, what we call a public safety power shutoff, when the weather forecast and fuels conditions are forecast to create an extreme fire risk. And Nora's going to talk about that in more detail. And so let's watch a video to learn a little bit more about how we use de-energizations to prevent wildfires.
At Pacific Power, we're committed to providing the safe, reliable service you count on every day. During conditions such as gusting winds and hot, dry weather, and in areas near trees and other types of vegetation that could ignite, we need to take certain steps to prevent wildfires and reduce their impacts. While these safety measures may interrupt your service, they can prevent catastrophic wildfire events. Let's look at 3 of the ways we help protect communities and prevent wildfires. The first is enhanced safety settings. During times when wildfire risk is elevated, we will adjust the sensitivity of some of our equipment. With these settings activated, our lines will de-energize within fractions of a second if a line is contacted by debris, wildlife, or strong winds, reducing the risk of a fire ignition. Because of this, there's an increased potential for power to be disrupted and remain off until field crews can visually inspect the lines before power can be safely restored. Next is the public safety power shutoff. Hotter, drier, and windier weather conditions can create heightened wildfire risk, and we may carry out a public safety power shutoff, or PSPS, shutting off power to specific targeted areas. A PSPS is done in partnership with local public safety partners. If a PSPS is likely to occur, we attempt to notify customers that power may be turned off and to keep affected communities informed throughout a de-energization. Once we've determined that the fire risk has passed, we will safely re-energize lines and restore service. Emergency de-energization is another wildfire prevention method that may result in a disruption of your power. When an active wildfire moves close enough to threaten burning into our lines or equipment, we will begin monitoring the fire closely to evaluate its potential spread and impact to our systems. If the fire is moving too close to our equipment, we will complete an emergency de-energization of our power lines. This process helps us prevent additional wildfires and protect first responders. Here at Pacific Power, we're dedicated to keeping our customers safe while delivering the power that our communities count on every day. During times of extreme weather events, when wildfire risk is at its highest, our wildfire prevention measures will help protect our customers and the communities we serve. To learn more, visit us at pacificpower.net/wildfire.
So as you saw in the video, and we've talked about, we may turn off the power in a variety of circumstances to prevent the risk of wildfire. But we also understand that that has an impact on all of you. And so up here on the slide, you can see a 25-mile radius around Bend. So that includes Redmond, Prineville, and areas south, just south of Bend. And last year we had 105 enhanced safety setting related outages, and those are the dots in red. And we had 13 emergency de-energization related outages, and those are the dots in blue. And just to give you an idea of how closely we're monitoring, yesterday up near Madras, I know it's a little bit far away, but we were monitoring a fire for a potential emergency de-energization. So we didn't de-energize, but it gives you an idea of like we are monitoring all the time for potential emergency de-energizations, and also that fire season has no season because it's mid-May and we go, wait, why, we would expect maybe some of this to be happening later in the year. But this just gives you an idea of kind of the impact of these operational practices. And we know that's an impact to you, particularly if you may have experienced multiple outages during a season. We know that's disruptive. But safety is our top priority. And if we have to choose between safety and reliability, we're always going to choose safety. So we're going to share a little bit about how we are going to keep you informed about these events so that you know what's going on. No? Oh, sorry. Sorry, we updated slides. I apologize. And I was like, wait. But for emergency de-energizations, if there's a pending emergency de-energization, like the one we were monitoring the other day or yesterday in Madras, If we have time, we will send you a notification that there's a pending de-energization. So remember, this is about fire coming near our equipment, so we may not have time, but if we have time, we're going to notify you based off the preferences you have for receiving outage alerts. That's text, phone, or email. And if you aren't sure you're signed up for outage alerts, or you aren't sure of your preferences, Ismari, Marcos, and Adrian are over here, and they're from our customer service team, and you can check with them and make sure to get that updated today. If it's immediate, we may not be able to notify you if the fire's coming too quickly, but as soon as the power's out, we will send you an outage notification, again, based off text, phone, or email. On enhanced safety settings, at the start of the season, we will put our equipment on the circuits that we identify in enhanced safety settings for the season. So we will send you a letter either by email or by mail based off your preference to let you know that your circuit is on enhanced safety settings for the season. So we want you to know that's happened. If there is an outage on your circuit that's on enhanced safety settings, we'll notify you that there's an outage, and we'll also tell you it's due to enhanced safety settings. So we'll let you know that's going on. We also heard feedback from all of you last year that you want to know why an outage is happening, if it's because of an emergency de-energization or if it's because of enhanced safety settings. So this week, we are updating our outage map. Hopefully you won't see many of these this year, but if you do, if there's an outage because of enhanced safety settings, you're going to see the little safety shutoff or the little purplish icon that says safety settings. That's the reason for the outage. And you can click on it and find more information. And if it's because of an emergency de-energization, you're going to look at the orange triangle and it'll tell you that's the reason. And you can click on that little icon and learn more about what's going on. So we heard from all of you, you want to know why there's an outage. And absolutely fair, so we wanted to give you some more information to know what's going on our outage map. So that should be going live tomorrow. So, but hopefully if you go check our outage map tomorrow, there's none of this going on. So if you go look, hopefully there won't be any on there, but you'll know that we've got it set up and ready to go if something does happen. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Nora to talk about public safety power shutoffs and preparedness.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. I know Melissa said there's no quiz, but I do have a quiz for you, so I apologize. You heard about enhanced safety settings and you heard about emergency de-energizations. I'm going to talk about public safety power shutoffs. How many of you are familiar with what that is? Okay. Okay. So a public safety power shutoff is basically, it's our tool of last resort, but we do this when it's no longer safe to operate our grid. When the weather becomes so extreme that we can no longer safely run electricity. And we've done one in Oregon that was in September of 2022. So we hope to not have to do these too often, but you never know. These are the considerations for the public safety power shutoff, or PSPS. When you have extreme dry, hot, windy weather, when you have dead, dry vegetation, meaning a lot of fuel that can ignite and start a fire, and then if there's an impact to a community. So those three considerations go into play. And if we have to do that, we actually have pretty good knowledge of when it's coming up. Our meteorologist team will forecast this, we know, about 5 days in advance. And we start fine-tuning it and trying to minimize the impact to what areas will need to be shut off. About 3 days out, we start working with our public safety partners. So Jackie here, our emergency manager, and Elisa and Austin, our director, and his team will start working locally to determine, do we have any critical facilities that will need power during the power shutoffs, like a hospital or a care facility if a fire station doesn't have it. Do we also need to stand up a community resource center? And this is, unlike a shelter, it's a location that customers can go from the morning to the evening hours. They're not open overnight, but you can get information, you can get out of the extreme conditions, you can get snacks, charge your devices, get on Wi-Fi, and we offer those services. So we determine where to set one of those up that works best for the community that's impacted. Then 2 days out, we start warning customers and we start letting you know. So it's really important for us to make sure we have your proper contact information. And that's one of the reasons why our customer service team is here tonight, because we welcome you to verify, check your contact information, and let us know your preferences. You can give us your email, your work phone, your home phone, your cell phone, and let us know how you prefer for us to communicate with you. For an emergency event like this, we would try all methods that we have to make sure that we reach you and you understand the impact. And then again, we communicate throughout the event as outlined here, and then at the end, we communicate and let you know that the power's back on and restored. So that way, if you chose to leave, you can return home. Or if your power's not back on, we can help you troubleshoot and make sure we get the power back on. So a planned event versus an event reacting to either a wildfire or damage or debris in our system. One of the things that Melissa talked about and Hallie talked about are situational awareness. So I'm really happy to let you know that we're expanding our team greatly to address a lot of the new technologies and available information, as well as the increasing demand and increasing risk that we're facing in the wildfire space. So Jackie on our emergency management team, day to day, she works with our partners. They do a lot of coordination meetings, they do trainings, exercises, they write plans. But then during an event, Jackie's in our emergency coordination center organizing and making sure the resources are getting to where they need to and coordinating that response. So what we've done this year is we're standing up 2 new capabilities. And one of them is our fire and emergency response managers, and Todd is in the back of the room. He's new with us, and he will be your local response manager. He can actually go out into the field and be deployed and work directly with the incident management team to coordinate the response. That way we can understand their priorities right away, and we have direct access, so that way we can energize, de-energize, we can get access to repair and restore as quickly as possible, and we're really excited about this capability. We started doing this last year and found a lot faster restoration of our services following wildfires. So very happy to have Todd on board with us here. And then the other capability is our watch desk. We're calling it the Wildfire Intelligence Center. We're standing it up. It'll be 24/7 soon. And that's monitoring all of the various platforms for risk and helping us make really quicker, more accurate decisions on how to operate our system, specifically related to emergency de-energizations and a variety of other risk factors that we're facing. So we're really excited to have this capability and improve and make our service not just safer and more reliable, but making sure that we're also understanding the scenarios and the environment outside. Now I want to talk about what you can do. So quickly, raise of hands, do you have an emergency plan or an emergency kit or both? If you have both, raise both hands. I'm just kidding. Hey, awesome, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. One of the things that, we always talk about preparedness. It doesn't have to be a power outage caused by, us de-energizing because of a wildfire or enhanced safety settings. It could be anything, that can be an emergency. So a plan free to create requires time, requires understanding your risks and hazards. There's templates online available for free. You can just print them out and write them out. But just simple things like, what are the hazards in your area? What if you can't get home and your family is separated, where are you going to meet? What's your emergency location? Do you have all of your contacts written down somewhere? Do you remember all of your phone numbers in your cell phone? Or do you have that written down somewhere? So it doesn't have to be a big emergency, but something to keep in mind, having that everything documented and available to you, just in case you lose access to all the electronic and the tools that we have today is a great peace of mind. And then for a kit, we encourage, if you don't have one, start putting one together. You don't have to do it all in one weekend. You can take some time and put it together, but really consider what you need for your family and your loved ones or anyone that relies on you, children, pets. Make sure you have food that people like to eat, not, stuff that isn't very tasty, because during a disaster, you want to be comfortable, right? As much as you can. Make sure kids have comfort items and you have pet supplies and so forth. So highly encourage that. And we have available material over here for you to take a look at. And then my last quiz, I promise, defensible space. Do you practice defensible space? For those of you that have some land. Thank you. Okay, a couple, great, thank you. So it's really important, and we've learned throughout the years. The Oregon State Fire Marshal has a great website and resource on here, and it's available all over the place, but it's how you manage your vegetation around your home. So the closer to your home, the less vegetation you should have, the more you should trim it. There's a variety of practices you can do that are labor related, right? Trimming trees, making sure that the fire doesn't touch them, and having the right height, making sure that you have vegetation and debris cleared. There's also investments you can make. You can get fire resistant materials for your home. You can also cover up your vents so embers don't come in and ignite a fire, but it has been proven that defensible space does protect a home. It can protect a home during a wildfire. And then the last thing I want to talk about is what we have available for you. So I want to mention, if you yourself or if you know somebody that requires electricity for medical devices or has a life-saving need for medical devices, we have a medical certificate program that they can sign up through their doctor. What that will do is provide a variety of services available to them to help them in the situation, including a $4,000 rebate, up to $4,000 rebate for battery backup. And we know that those that rely on electricity for life-saving devices, it's really critical to make sure that they have that supply. So we highly encourage, if you know anybody or if you have friends, family members, neighbors, just please let them know we have this available, because we'd love to have you take advantage of it and making sure that yourself, your family, and your community are safe. And then finally, just to reiterate, we'd love for you to take advantage of our customer service team here. Please verify your contact information is up to date and accurate. Let us know how you prefer to be communicated to. If you don't have time tonight or prefer, you can also call the 800 number. There's always a live person to answer the phone call, or you can log on to your account, and please make sure you sign up for the alerts. And with that, I'll hand it back to Hallie.
Thanks, Nora. So all of the things we've been talking about today are covered in our wildfire mitigation plan. So if you at any point would like to read through the entire plan, it's a little long. You can see that on our website at pacificcorp.com/safety, or you can scan the QR code here. You can actually see the wildfire mitigation plans that we file for any of the states we operate in, and that includes the updates that we do every year for those. So that brings us to kind of the end of our prepared presentation. So we'd really like to open it up for Q&A. So how this is going to work is